Even when the New York Giants win, it still feels like a loss. We know that the New York Giants cost themselves potentially the number 1 overall pick, but what we just heard, it makes the win 1,000 times worse. We're going to break that down on today's show, but we are inching closer and closer to 99,000 subscribers. We are 97 people away from getting to our goal of 99K. If you love this football team, you want the best content on YouTube all off season long, smash that sub button right now. This is New York Giants Now by Chat Sports. I am your host, Marshall Green, and it seemed like the win yesterday against the Raiders was going to be the worst news that we got all week, but rumors, reports, and insiders are hinting that Joe Schoen is going to be back as the general manager next season. And this is kind of a change of direction for what we have heard really in the prior week. There was reports coming out that it was a 50-50 shot of if Joe Schoen was going to be back, and that the final games of the season were going to be critical in that decision. And these reports came out prior to the win over the Las Vegas Raiders. But I'm sure the New York Giants will place a lot of stock in those wins against a tough Raiders team that were playing all of their best players. Right, John Mara? What about Ian Rappaport saying this on NFL Network? Meanwhile, the Giants could have the number 1 pick. This was said prior to the win. Expect them to evaluate all options, including looking at Fernando Mendoza, before they make a decision on how to proceed if they have this pick. All right, so Ian Rappaport saying that with the number 1 pick, the New York Giants have all options on the table and they could potentially draft Fernando Mendoza. That's not the story with what he said. Look again at the graphic and what it says on the ticker. Right here. We'll make it even bigger for you. We'll go back to the full screen picture of this real quick, Andrew Connell, and we'll let all the boys and girls read what is on the screen for the New York Giants and what it says about the future. Giants will consider all options if they end up with the first overall pick. And GM Joe Schoen likely to remain with the team for the draft. What? Not that Joe Schoen is likely to stay with the team. We always thought there was a chance of that, and it was kind of trending in the direction that wouldn't be the case. But he will remain with the team for the draft. Does that mean after the draft you're going to fire him? I mean, I know the Giants made a lot of stupid decisions. They're not stupid enough to keep a GM who they don't think is the future at GM and let him pick number 2 overall in the NFL draft just to fire him after that. The Giants aren't that stupid, right? Like, nobody is that stupid. Because that would be the stupidest thing the Giants have ever done in the history of their franchise. The 101-year history. There is no way that you can keep Joe Schoen for the draft and for the draft only. I'm not even going to allow myself to believe that that is real, because that makes absolutely no sense. If you're going to keep Joe Schoen, you know what? I can at least maybe understand that. But keep him to let him draft and then to fire him? I feel like someone is just taking a paddle and whacking the back of my head as I try to process that. Shout out to my guy Jimmy T on Twitter. Awesome stuff with all New York sports. Shout out to Jimmy, awesome guy. Posted this screenshot from Pat Leonard's YouTube show, Talking Ball with Pat Leonard. He does a live post-game show. And Pat said, I've had conversations since then that confirm Schoen has been and is conducting himself as if he's coming back. And Jimmy adds, sounds like Joe Schoen will be back for a 5th season as the Giants general manager. Pat explains it in this video. So look, you have Rappaport, NFL Network hinting that he could be back and back for the draft. I don't understand what that means. And then right there, Pat Leonard saying Joe Schoen's preparing. And I'll just pour a little water on that fire. Of course, Joe Schoen is preparing like he's going to be back. What else would he be preparing for? Is he preparing to be fired? Is he putting all his paperwork up in a filing cabinet? Of course he's still scouting. Of course he's still leading the head coach search. He wants to be back. He thinks he should be back. Of course he's got to prepare to do so. So I'll pour a little bit of water on that. I'll just say this. It makes no sense to bring Joe Schoen back for so many different levels. I continue to tell myself, Marshall, challenge yourself as a host and create an argument for Joe Schoen to be back. I can't do it. There is no reason. One, you don't win games. Like, ever. And when you do win games, it costs you future success. Giants have 6 wins in the last 2 years. One of them being against the Colts. A game that I would say 90% of the fan base didn't want to win. Then a win on Sunday against the Raiders that 90% of the fan base did not want to win. So you have 2 meaningful wins this year and 2 meaningful wins last year. You have 4 meaningful football games. 1 of the last 4 plus 13 is 17 plus 12 is 29. You've won 4 of your last 29 games that are meaningful. It makes no sense to bring him back. You're going to trust him with the number 2 overall pick? You're going to trust him to execute a trade to get the most possible to get that number 2 overall pick to another team and picks back to you? Like, I'll bring on Andrew Cottle, producer of the show. You're a lot more optimistic than I am. I'm glass half empty. You are glass half full. Why? Why would you bring Joe Schoen back?
Yeah, I don't.
I am challenging you to find good reasons. Not to tell me that you don't think they should, because we at least have brains.
Yeah.
Mine maybe not that big. It works, though. And it knows that it is not smart to bring Joe Schoen back.
Is this in the context of in general, or just keep him for the draft, or whatever?
Well, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, that the only way in which I will challenge myself to say that makes sense is if you're planning on hiring someone who hasn't done any draft prep, which would be the worst decision you could ever make.
Let's hire a GM who hasn't done draft prep.
Yeah, exactly. Other than that, reasons to keep Joe Schoen, I don't know. I'm sure he has a lot of clips cut up from yesterday of guys that he drafted and picked that are.
See Darius Alexander's sack?
Did you see that kick return by Deontay Banks? Bobby Okereke, I signed him in free agency. He had an interception.
Wandale Robinson.
Yeah, Wandale, 2nd-round pick by Joe. I don't know. I'm sure it's going to be a lot of the things he said during his bye week press conference. I'm sure it's the same.
Young nucleus of talent.
Yeah, young nucleus of talent. One
Theo
score
Johnson.
Games.
Oh, yeah.
One score games. He's going to pull that.
Look, when we get good coaching, we could beat the Raiders.
Exactly.
I was watching some Giants content with my dad when I was back at home for the holidays, and someone brought up how the Giants' salary cap health is very healthy. And my dad jokingly said, look, Joe Schoen set us up. I was like, yeah, he cracked the code. If you don't pay good players, you don't have any dead cap money.
Exactly. That shouldn't be a reason that a GM's doing a good job. That should be a requirement of the job to have clean books, especially with a team that's not winning. If anything, you want
bad books and you won 6 games of your last 33. That's a problem. It already is a problem. Like, and I say this with the most respect and condolences, prayers, thoughts, concerns to the Mara family. Mm-hmm. You're a $10 billion organization.
Yeah. If
you can't overhaul your organization because of one person, I think that speaks to the bigger problems that you have.
Yeah, and like Joe Schoen was really the first external non-Giants hire that they had in a position this important. And I think they thought that was going to fix and solve all the problems because the Giant way had fallen stale. We'd seen, I guess it was Jerry Reese and Dave Gettleman, guys who are kind of grew up and come of age in their professional careers in that Giants building, even though they hired Gettleman away from Carolina previously.
He had major ties here.
Yeah. This was the first guy who really didn't have any ties to the organization before he came here, and I think they thought that was going to fix everything, and he'd come in with a new regime and change all the ways, and I'm not sure what he's changed. They've just continued to lose and lose and lose. He had one playoff season in their first year, Shane and Dable, that being, but that wasn't them. They didn't draft any of those players. They didn't sign any of those
Brian
players.
Dable deserves more credit than Joe Schoen.
Exactly,
for
getting the most out of that roster. The guys are already here. So, since Joe Schoen has had his fingerprints all over this roster, you'd say year 4 under him. Could argue this is fully his roster. Whatever the guys that are still here from before he was here, he's decided to keep, or he's extended them, signed into a new contract, whatever you want to call it. Not good. It's just not a good team. And yes, they've had injuries. It's the NFL. Every team has injuries. You can't really use that as an excuse. And if anything, you were not supposed to draft injury-prone players. You were only supposed to draft smart, tough, defendable guys. So,
look at the Chargers down their left tackle and their right tackle, and they won 11 games this year. Every team.
2 running backs or 3 running backs or whatever they're down. So
it's unreal. I don't know. Maybe I do a video and I test myself, and maybe we make it 1 second long or something like that. I don't know. We got a little bit more to talk about. We'll do that coming up in a second. But if you want to get your Giants Now t-shirt today to support Chat Sports, to support this channel, go to chatsports.com/Giants Now shirt. An embroidered logo on there. It's pretty sweet. Once you get it, send me a picture on social media, and we'll put it up on the channel. All right, so we know the New York Giants won, but they really lost, and now they own the number 2 pick in the 2026 NFL Draft. This is what the draft order looks like at this point. If the New York Giants lose to the Dallas Cowboys next week, as they enter 5.5-point underdogs, if the Giants lose this game, no matter what happens across the NFL, the highest they will pick is number 2. They will either pick number 1 or number 2 if they lose this ball game. If the Giants lose to the Cowboys and the Kansas City Chiefs lose to the Las Vegas Raiders, so if the Giants lose and the Raiders win in Week 18, the Giants are back to the number 1 pick in the NFL Draft. So if you want to root for something next week, root for the Cowboys. I know it sucks. Maybe don't even root for the Cowboys. Root for the Giants to lose and root for the Raiders to win. How likely is it? I don't know. So let's say the New York Giants have the number 2 pick. What's best case scenario? Dante Moore, the quarterback for Oregon, balls out in the college football playoff. And he leads them to the national championship. And he wins the national championship. And he has no reason to return to college. There's been some rumors over the past couple of weeks and months that he could return to college. Look, if you're guaranteed a top 5 pick, that's $45 million guaranteed. I think it'd be pretty dumb to turn that down unless you don't want to go to one of those top 2 teams. But root for the Ducks, root for Oregon, root for Dante Moore to have success, because if he does have success, a team will want to leapfrog the Jets at number 2 to come up. Leapfrog the Jets number 3 to come up to number 2, and the Giants could still, in theory, get a haul by trading down for number 2. So that's where we're at on that. Man, I'm rooting for the Raiders, though. I really, really am. I don't think it's crazy to think the Raiders could beat the Chiefs. If you want it to happen, if you want the Las Vegas Raiders to beat the Kansas City Chiefs, as there is the draft order we talked about, Dante Moore becomes a good quarterback and a draft prospect, there's 2 quarterbacks, that incentivizes a team to jump up to number 2. But hey, how about we just lose to the Cowboys and Raiders beat the Chiefs without Mahomes and without Minshew and whoever the hell that quarterback is. Want it to happen, hit that thumbs up icon. Make sure you are following me on social media. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. And let's go Raiders.